as a technology for this. It meets all the requirements. Workflow was newly added. Always had content management. Document management was added a couple versions ago. Right? It's everything that we need. We are a Microsoft shop, so it aligned with our development skills, quote unquote. Right? We can customize it using .NET coding. Customization is important to us because we know that what we need to do is not something that would be supportable out of the box. We could use it in a rapid application development environment. And it also integrated well with Microsoft Dynamics GP, which is what we were going to use to replace our HP 3000 system, that 17-year-old system. Okay, so those are all benefits of SharePoint 2000. Let's look at what else we could have used. We could have used an ERP system, like SAP or PeopleSoft or Oracle or whatever. They're a little bit more expensive, all across the board. Initial licensing, customization cost, annual maintenance, millions of dollars. By the way, ERP systems are just really fancy ways of tricking people into paying a lot of money to program in a custom language. None of those ERP systems work out of the box for any real company. Any real company requires extensive customizations. You're essentially programming in SAP, in Oracle, in PeopleSoft. Okay, so they're a great marketing tool, great marketing spin. Whoever came up with that business plan is fabulous. People will pay us a ton of money to give them a product where they have to write their own stuff, right? That's what these ERP systems do. And the landscape is just littered with companies that have had failed or botched implementations. Ones that overran it by millions of dollars, years late, company goes under. The ROI on these things is almost never achieved. How do you get $20 million in savings on an ERP system? And that's what you're looking at as your 5-year cost on a typical engagement. By the way, that's also beyond our ability to do, so that wasn't a good thing either in spite of the cost. And it wouldn't integrate with what we were planning to use with our finance system. There are also workflow systems out there, Documentum, DocuCore, others out there too. Could we just buy one of those and use that? The answer is sure you could. Here's the issue. Those things are more expensive than SharePoint. They're very, very hard to customize. You're buying a feature set. You're not buying a programming language. And you're trying to stack things on top of that. Those systems, DocuCore in particular, started out as document management systems that they threw a workflow engine on top of. They weren't designed from the ground up to be workflow engines, which means that the workflows that they support are really document management workflows, not general business process workflows. Okay. Anytime you make customizations to a product, you block your upgrade path. You would have that issue here. And because we couldn't own the code, we'd have to rely on a third party to release features for us. Guess what? We're not that big. It's tough to get a Documentum or a DocuCore to develop custom features just for us. So all those reasons are reasons why we chose to use SharePoint. It was all very cool. So we figured out what we wanted to build. We figured out what technology we were going to use to build it. How do we get started? Portomatic, again, that's our core system, is very complex. That workflow is very complex. We've got 100 different branches, all doing things differently. Right? No standard operating procedure. By the way, that's exactly why we need a workflow system, to enforce that standard operating procedure, to drive those economies and efficiencies by standardization. We perform 1.8 million exams a year in the United States. That's a lot of orders. Each one of those needs to be placed, scheduled, examiner visits, you get results, you QA it, you release it, you bill it. A lot of steps. We have 600 different insurance carriers in our system. Those are the people that pay the bills. Okay. When you get an exam done, the insurance company pays us for doing the exam. We have 5,000 or more agents. Those are people that actually ordered the exam. An agent sold you a life insurance policy for a carrier. Carrier pays a bill, agent places the order with us. That, by the way, is kind of unique. The people that order the service don't pay for it. that exposes a lot of problems for us later. We have 9,000 plus examiners. Those are the people that actually go and do the work, the people that visit you at home and do that insurance exam for you. And we have over 1,800 users of the system. Okay? Not a small system. Screw this one up, a lot of revenue goes away. A lot of customers get angry. A lot of people won't want to work for you anymore. Everything that we do varies by carrier. Carriers have different requirements. They have different products. They have different forms. They have different ways they want us to be evaluating or doing an exam on their people, on their applicants. And they have different forms that vary by carrier and by state. Those are all filed by the carrier at the state level. Right? And those are legal and regulatory requirements for that. We have over 30,000 forms in our database. We have to pull the right form for the right order. Okay? So that's a daunting thing to start with. Instead, we started with something simpler. So we're going to build this workflow engine. Right? We started with a simpler workflow that's easier for us to understand. That's the APS workflow. Also less risky. Right? A lot less money here than there. If we mess this one up, a few $1 million. Mess that one up, $150, $140 million. Big difference. So APS is stands for Attending Physician Statement Workflow. That's basically when we call your doctor and ask for a copy of your medical records. And we take those medical records, and we send them to the insurance carrier. Pretty simple. That's done in a call center environment. We have people that call those facilities, go through the HIPAA requirements of validating that you're a patient there, we've got the appropriate consent to get your information and pass it on, all of that. We started there. It's been successfully developed and deployed. And we can apply the lessons learned and the components that we developed to the Portamedic workflow. We developed a lot of custom components, in particular, for a lot of things that SharePoint doesn't support out of the box, but they provide you with the tools to develop it in Visual Studio. 81% of the components that we developed for APS were transferable to Portamedic. Okay, so that's my reusable development environment that lowers my cost of doing a new system. 81% of the components we developed for this workflow were applicable to another workflow. Okay, so here's what it looks like. From an architecture level, we got a database sitting at the bottom, right? That's spanning the entire enterprise. SQL Server 2000, and that's actually 2008 now. When I started, it was 2005. We've got a SharePoint layer sitting on top of that. Right? That SharePoint layer exposes the number of services. They're all here. We've added a .NET layer, which has all our custom components, whether those custom components are UI-based, application layer-based, or workflow-based. And then sitting on top of everything else, we've got a reporting layer. So it's Microsoft Office SharePoint, the WSS 3.0, SQL Server 2008, Visual Studio 2008. Process standardization. Right? We do the same thing for every customer. That's McDonald's of the industry. We can do process automation. SharePoint, again, a workflow is just moving a unit of work along a series of defined steps. Moving the unit from one step to the other can happen manually, meaning a person moves it along, or it can happen automatically if a series of conditions are true and are met. The system can move it along for you. Okay? If you don't have a workflow system, all your steps are manual. A person needs to move it from one to the next. Well, in almost everything that we do, we can apply the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, for 80% of the orders, we can move a case on automatically, meaning a person doesn't need to touch it. They only need to touch the exception rather than the rule. If I'm touching the exception rather than the rule, I need less people, right? Or my people are more efficient. Right? So I've got increased operating efficiency and lower my processing cost if I can apply process automation to this. And that's what SharePoint allows us to do. Okay, so we no longer open every order to check the requirements because 5% of the orders have missing requirements. Instead, we automatically route through 95% of the orders and catch the 5% that are missing requirements and send them to an exception queue where a person looks at the exception queue. Okay? Having this enterprise-wide system allows me to centralize processes. I don't have 100 back-office processing centers now, or I don't need to. I can take tasks that are back-office and pull them into a processing center, where I can apply manufacturing techniques and economies of scale, all right, to realize efficiencies. And that allows the people that I've got locally in those 100 branches to concentrate on tasks that really benefit from local expertise. Here's the other benefit. I talked about how that system was very expensive for us. We're saving a couple $1 million the first year that we're running this in IT cost. All right, so this is an easy cost-benefit justification to get. Here's the summary that we have. This e-platform allows us to significantly lower the cost of both developing and running our business from an IT perspective. I'm just talking about the IT here. It also provides us with a platform where we can very easily and quickly bring new products and services to market faster than we could have before and cheaper than we could have before. Somebody wants to build something new, I don't need to build another application and all the business rules around it. I'm just building a workflow that's sitting on top of my workflow engine using all the components that I've already built. From a business perspective, I get operational efficiencies, and I can now integrate across our company products and services because workflows in SharePoint are allowed to spawn other workflows. So I could be in a Paramed order, reflex to an APS order, and order that and run that in the same engine. With this workflow system and SharePoint, because we have portal capabilities in SharePoint, I can now have our customers do some of the work that we would normally do. We schedule examiners. That means that we pay people to make appointments for an examiner. Insurance agents will happily schedule examiners because they've got people that want to be seen and they know when they want to see them. So if we design a portal for those agents, they will go and do some of the work for us. Right? We've also got agents who will go out and get APSs for us too because they think they can get it faster than we can. That's great. We'll open up the portal to you. You'll go do the work. We'll get paid. Right? That's pretty cool. And allows us to do integrated management reporting. By the way, that was the somewhere between the previous slide and a couple slides ago on that slide there was and the miracle occurs. All right, I talked about all the benefits of the system. I talked about what we were going to do, and I said, "Oh, look, this is what we get at the end." I didn't tell you about how we got there. Right, and the answer is that we haven't got there yet. That system is scheduled to be deployed at the end of this month. We're going to start the deployment then. Okay, and I'm happy to talk through, any development aspects or questions that you have, around that, later. But so pretend that we're already there, because if we're not already there, then I'm not going to be back next year. All right. So we had some bumps along the way, because clearly, you have great strategy, you have great vision, and all that sort of thing. It's all up to implementation, and of course, when you get into implementation, things happen, right? Now, for the Microsoft folks in the room, SharePoint licenses aren't cheap. And they're not exactly the easiest thing to figure out because you need lots of different types of licenses on different servers and CALs and all of that. So we underestimated the cost of SharePoint licensing. So if you want to give us a rebate, that'd be great. SharePoint does add overhead, right? It's another layer sitting between web server, your user interface layer, and your database layer and your application layer. Okay, so you got a SharePoint layer in there now. It does great stuff, right? No question about it. A lot of services for you. It does add overhead. Okay, so it's not as fast as running just a straight off .NET web app. Okay.